still working on the live stream here.
Okay.
See if YouTube treats me any better.
Right.
So it's live on YouTube.
No. Once this pandemic is over, if anyone is ever in Chicago, I'd be happy to give you guys a tour.
Oh, great. Thanks, Alejandro.
You're welcome.
Hi, Yvette.
Chris, I'm getting a notification that we are streaming on YouTube.
Yes, we now are.
Lovely.
And I will get this link shared. So everybody, we are streaming, and so anything you say, canon will be used against you.
Everybody be on their P's and Q's, please.
Right. And Caleb, I'll go ahead and make you host.
I'm not sure I'm worthy, but okay.
Oh, of course you are.
Now, hi, Ben. I see Ben Osmo, who I've spoken to, but we've never met face to face. Just have a face of the name.
Hey, Shawn, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Ben was very helpful. We were doing additional on something. What was it? Aliens?
Alien Covenant, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so Ben was very helpful in setting us up on this side of it.
It was a bit of a complicated shoot, that one. It was
a little bit.
How did it go for you?
It went fine. Yeah, we didn't have much to do. It was great though. And
cool.
Yeah, once we found the microphones.
Yeah.
Practical.
Yeah, right.
You know, that no one from production had, but that's another sidebar story, Ben. We'll talk about it another day.
No worries.
So, Chris, are we ready to kick it off?
I think, yeah, I'm sharing the stream now to the LA Sound Mixers business page as was previously advertised. So that is good. Yeah, I think we're just about ready to get started. It is 9:59 and 40 seconds. So we'll give it a bit more time here. Let's see, I'm feeling a message from Allie. Yes, she was able to get in. Hopefully she's here. And
I'm here, Chris, at work.
Hey, very good. All right, glad you made it.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Hi, Shawn.
Looks like we've got 41 people already.
Yes, and the stream is picking up a few more. Yep, very good.
I'm still not seeing the stream. I'm just seeing the chat.
Well, the stream you'd have to go to YouTube for. I can send you the link for it.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
But I can keep an eye on the stream from here if there's any questions.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, it's just after 10 o'clock now, so we'll get started. Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Chris Howland. I admin a Facebook group here in Los Angeles called LA Sound Mixers. We're dedicated to the mentorship and education of production sound professionals and film professionals here in LA. And we started this interview series. It was actually inspired by a conversation I had with Caleb Mose, who's with us today. Welcome, Caleb.
Hi, guys.
Caleb is gonna help us out with this interview. He's gonna be watching the chat. He'll be handling some aspects of the room and helping to field questions and get them to us as the conversation happens. So thank you so much, Caleb, for doing that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Indeed. And we're happy to welcome our guest today, who's it's been a very profound influence on me as I was coming up through the ranks and still is today. I'm really happy to know her, call her a friend. We served together on the 695 board of directors. And, you know, when Shawn talks, I listen. And I really appreciate having her on to help to tell her story. So please welcome Shawn Holden. Thank you, Shawn.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Shawn.
Hi.
So yeah, Shawn, let's jump right in.
Shawn.
Your journey has been a really amazing one. When you got started and you came up through the E&G world and then into narrative here in LA, and you're originally not an LA person. Where are you from originally?
Mostly Oklahoma, some Texas and some Oklahoma. So that's certainly Texas is where my entire extended family is from, but I spent most of my time in Oklahoma.
Very good. And what was the, it always seems like a weird question to start with. It's like, how did you get started? But that's one thing. But I guess what I really want to know is not only how did you get started, but what was it about sound that really, or this career path, what was it about it that grabbed you and made you have to live the life of a filmmaker, which is not an easy one?
Originally I was going to be a set still photographer. That's what I
Nice.
was going to do. I went to school to be a set still photographer, kind of, because I was already into photography, and I was at the University of Oklahoma, not really known for their film and television program, but I started there in journalism school and also taking classes in the art school for photography. There had been a couple of movies that had come through my little tiny town of 25,000 people in Oklahoma. And I always managed to find my way onto set and hang out and watch and see what was going on. So as I went through school, I had the opportunity in my final year to intern at a television station in Oklahoma City. And there, it was non-union, of course. There was a news magazine show that was on that many years ago called PM Magazine. PM Magazine, I don't know, some of you older folks in the States might remember. It was a nationwide show but you had your local things. And anyway, by the time I mean, even during my internship there, that I was getting college credit for, I was writing, producing, editing on big 1-inch machines, and doing sound. I was doing camera and sound and everything. So about a year and a half after my internship, they hired me. I worked there for about a year and a half, got laid off with a bunch of people because of oil crashing at the time. And I moved to Dallas, where they were building stages. It was going to be the Third Coast, big movies. Brr, brr. And I'd always wanted to work in movies somehow or another, even as a little kid. I just thought that would be the coolest thing, as we all do, So I moved to Dallas. I called everyone I knew. One of the people I knew from Dallas that had moved there, he was from the television station I'd been working at. He was the head news photographer there. And so I called him. I said, hey, if you ever need any help, I'm here. Let me know. One day he called. He was frantic. Get to the airport as fast as you can. There's been an earthquake in Mexico City. We're just going to go. Don't pack. Don't do anything. Just go. I did what he said. I picked up a dirty pair of jeans off the floor and put them on. I ran to the airport. I was there for a week. It was,
Wow.
10,000 dead people, and initiation by fire. I was working with Dan Rather and other CBS news people. And that I became a network news sound technician at that point, and worked for 12 years doing that, just all over the world.
When you're part of a press pool like that, I imagine do you see a lot of the same people around the world when you start traveling to all these places and chasing stories?
We absolutely do. They're in the early days of my career, there was a show called 48 Hours, a CBS show, 48 Hours. And it was really, truly 48 hours. You'd go converge in a city, and it was the first show. I mean, it's still on today, but it has nothing to do with what it started as. It was the first cinema verite shot show. It wasn't a reporter standing in front of something saying, here we are in front of, or interviewing a bunch of people. It was driven by natural sound. You put wires on people, you boomed, you moved, you were connected to the camera back in those days. And it was a real dance, but there were just a few people that in the country, maybe 8 or 9 crews that CBS really felt comfortable with this style of shooting. And so they send us everywhere. There may be 4 crews in this Cincinnati, and then next week you'd have 8 crews in Florida, or, whatever. And it was just the same group of people. So it was really great in that respect. We had a lot of fun, learned a lot of things. Peter Ng, who some of you people might know his name. He builds boxes, little connectors and cables and things for our industry. He was the first person, I swear to you, he was the very first person to ever go wireless to the camera in that style of work and that ENG work, because that the way we shot that show was so fast moving. And, you know, you'd be in a cop car and you'd have to, you know, you'd be connected to the cameraman in the front seat, and you'd pull up to a thing and you'd have your hand right on the cable ready to disconnect it, hop out and reconnect. And it was ridiculous. You couldn't do the show that way. So he had done this thing. We saw him one time in whatever city. We were like all going like, what's happening? And that caused the cameraman to have to monitor all the time, which was great. At that point, I was working with a cameraman and he wore a full set of cans, but it became more of a collaborative dance at that point too, where I could see what his eye couldn't, because he was right here and I was. So if I saw something having to do with the story, I could stick my boom over on top and he'd open his eye and look around to see where I was. And then he'd bring the camera over and settle. So it was really nice. It was a dance collaborative way to work back then, for sure.
Sure. And you know, it's I think it's really interesting when you work documentary films, especially when you're kind of put on the ground in a situation and you have to find the story, you have to find the characters in real time, and that really to me it really sets you up very well for learning the pillars of a story and how to tell a story later. So when you move, you know, for me, when I, you know, moved on to narrative, it's, you know, those are the things you take with you, I think. But no, that's very cool. Can you tell us a bit of what it was like? Did you met other sound mixers while you were out on location? You met other crews. Did you guys see each other as competition out there, or did you have each other's backs, or you know, what was, you know, I'm curious as to the tone of that, how that works. Oh, it looks like you froze. Shawn, your image is frozen. So maybe, hopefully.
That's frozen. Okay,
there you
here
are.
we go.
There
Hopefully.
You are. I see.
Are we back?
Good. Yes, you're good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Competition. No. We were all equals. We weren't competing against each other. We were happy to help each other. There were, especially when I first started, you know, I was carrying a 3/4 inch deck connected to an old camera. There were maybe 4 or 5 women in the country doing what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Because it was just, you had to really, truly, it was a pack mule, you know, and there were 2 little knobs on top of the deck, of the recording deck. That was, you know, that was sound. That carrying HMEs or Vega wireless, if you had wireless, that was that. And oh my gosh, it was, you know, it's like carrying a X3 with, you know, 8 wires and 4 batteries. It's kind of the same thing.
Right.
But competition, no. We were all collaborative. We were all helping each other. We were all in it together and just had a great time. And I didn't really feel of anything. It was really, more than anything, it was just being a woman and how the reaction I would get from mainly producers. You'd show up in a nude city that night, and that morning you'd meet the producer in the lobby of the hotel and to go out and shoot whatever you were shooting. And the cameraman would introduce himself and they'd have a little conversation, and then he'd turn and he'd say, well, this is Shawn, the sound tech, and the blood would drain from their face. And they'd go, oh, you're Shawn. And they'd be freaking out. You could just see the wheels turning, like, oh my God, what have we gotten into? What's going to happen? Oh no.
Jeez. And this happened a lot, or only a few times?
Oh, it happened. Oh yeah, it happened. Yeah, it happened several times. But you know, then once your name was there, and one producer would know that this is the crew they're getting, and then they have heard their name and they would know, and it would be fine. All you had to do was never make a mistake. That was it.
Are you kidding? And in such an imperfect world where nothing is cut and dried, it's like that just to be under that level of scrutiny sucks. I mean,
you could never have a piece of gear go down. You could never, if you did, you better have a second, a plan B, or you could never miss a line, or because, we got one chance to get it right in those days. There were no second takes with any of that. We got one chance. Mike Wallace, he don't play. He would not put up with that. So you had to be on your game all the time. Oh
gosh. And
Chris,
so
may I ask Shawn a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Shawn, were you paired with the same camera person for most of that time? And if so, did they have your back?
I worked with, that's kind of how it worked. You worked with a particular camera person and you traveled as a pair all around. Through my career, there were 2 or 3 guys that I worked with for years at a time, 2 or 3 years. And you just worked as a team, and they did have your back. Absolutely. The only thing that it was always about the equipment, because the more equipment I bought, because when I first started, the first guy I started with, all his sound gear was in an old Halliburton aluminum suitcase, one of those big, just aluminum, just no padding. You just opened it up and there was wads of cable and just crap everywhere. And so once I got all that organized and really figured out things that did work and things that didn't work, and then I decided, okay, I need to buy this, I need to buy that. I got my 416 and I got my,
I was going to say, yeah. What are some of those gear choices you made on the first package?
Well, I think my first mic was an ME88 maybe. It was kind of modular, old Sennheiser. I'm sure they don't make them anymore, but that was cheaper to get into than the 416. And then I finally got a 416T, because that's kind of what people did back then. And I still have that microphone today. As a matter of fact,
wow.
It still works. It's amazing. You could hammer a nail in the wall and then plug it in and record it, an interview.
Me too. I've still got a couple.
Yeah.
But
it's
darn bulletproof.
Those were awesome. And then eventually I got my own mixer. People back then were using the FP33, the little Shure 3-channel, and I was never crazy about that. So I got an audio development 8260, I think it was. And
that's a nice mixer.
It was a 4-channel mixer. I still have that today. I use that on the Mandalorian on my communications cart for earwigs and voice guides and stuff, just to split things out. But those were the things I really started to buy. And then I bought wireless. I still have some of those wireless as well, the Electrosonics 187s, 185s. I think and those came in traveling frequencies. And each one of these crews, like on the 48 hours things, we would have the list of traveling frequencies. And when you got there, we'd all have a production meeting the night before, and you decide, okay, well, you're going to be using these 2 and I'll use these 2 and blah, blah, blah. Unless we had an element, a person that was going to go from in a hospital. We were working upstairs in the hospital and somebody else was working in the emergency room, and you'd have a doctor wired with 169.505, one of the famous traveling frequencies. And he would go from, whatever you were doing and down to whatever they were doing, and they could just pick him up. They'd just pick him up on their receiver. It was great. It worked out well.
Awesome. And this is just a workflow that you guys developed together over getting used to the ebbs and flows of that whole world.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, do you remember any specific mentors or mentorship you had during that E&G time? Or were you really left to your own devices figuring that stuff out?
I wish I could say, but there were a couple things. There was nobody around me that did this that I could call or talk to or whatever. It was just it was initiation by fire. You just got thrown into the deep end of the pool, and after, like I said, I'd done some sound at the television station, and so this was just a lot more of it, and you learn from your mistakes. I say you could make mistakes, but we all make little you know, there was all little things here and there that you would go, sheesh, I can't do that again. And so during that time, it was just learn by doing it. Really.
Very cool. So, and so when you got to Dallas, it was still a lot of doing news coverage and that kind of stuff when you were in Dallas?
Oh, absolutely.
Was
yeah, no,
okay.
I was there. Yeah, no, all of this after about a year, like I say, about a year and a half at the TV station. Boom, I moved to Dallas, and I moved to Dallas in 85. I was there from 85 to 95 till I moved here. So it was a good, no, actually it was more than that, 84, I think, because that was the earthquake and I was living in Dallas then. So.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. So then, you know, so what prompted the move to LA? What and the move into narrative film? Is that just you always had your goals set on doing narrative film, or
well,
yeah?
Oh, a couple of reasons. Yeah, I had sort of reached the peak of what I could do in the news world I was working in. It had sort of started to shift. It became, you know, there were shows like Hard Copy and Inside Edition and shows like that were much more tabloid kind of based and feel to and the networks had sort of, they kind of started turning a little bit more that way just to compete, and they weren't traveling you as much. I traveled around the world. I mean, I'd gotten to do so many great things, but that sort of had stopped, and you were traveling regionally, and I don't know, it was just sort of, I knew that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life carrying 35 pounds around my neck all day.
Right.
You know, this shoulder still is a little bit lower than that one, because this was before harnesses. I mean, nobody made a great harness that you could wear with all this stuff. It was just a shoulder strap, you know. Geez,
I think nuts. I have some pictures of some of your travel destinations. Should I pull those up? Let's see. Hey, Caleb, can you enable screen sharing so I can share those pictures?
Sheesh.
It would be under security shield, and
oh, I said share screen. I thought that was it.
No, you want to go to the security shield and say enable share screen by participants.
Share screen. There we go.
Something like that. All right, there we go. Let's see. Can you guys see these?
Let me
see.
Wow. Grand Canyon.
Yeah, let me see if I can just share this particular picture. Yeah, there's that one.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah. See, I also have some tiny pink shorts. You know, Mr. Nightingale wasn't the only one that had that look going.
Oh, that's awesome. So that one, and that was, yeah, you can tell. So the big CBS News caps. I love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Any idea what story you were covering on this one?
Yeah, it was 48 hours in the Grand Canyon. We walked all the way down with all the gear, following a family, spent the night, and then walked all the way back up with all the gear. Yeah, no bueno.
Yeah.
Did you shoot on the way back up?
Oh yeah. Oh, sure we did. Yeah.
Longest walk and talk in history.
I remember those days.
Oh man.
Let me see. Let's see if I can get to another picture here. Let's see. No, go to. There it is. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's one of you in Norway. This one.
Oh, that was great. The Olympics.
Yeah. Oh, is that the Olympics?
Yeah.
Oh,
the Olympics, cool. Lillehammer. That's that downhill course right behind there. Yeah, I was on skis with the gear. We were skiing and setting mics and things with the equipment until my cameraman, who was a guy from somewhere in Europe, I don't remember. He followed the World Cup ski people around, and he had a bad crash, and then he didn't want to go up anymore. So then we were at the finish line, which was great because that year the American skiers did a lot. Picaboo Street, Tommy Moe, all these great American skiers won. And so we were there while they, you know, got on some phone and were like, "Hey, Mom, I won. You know, it was great. It was great." We also, there was well, that's the story nobody cares about. Never mind.
Come on.
Well, Alberto Tomba was this Italian stallion, you know,
Uh-huh.
ski all day and party all night. And this cameraman knew him pretty well. So that was one of our assignments, was to go to this little uh, cabin that the Italians had come into, and they had imported everything. They made it the place where all the Italians hung out. I mean, they imported everything. Even the wait staff was from Italy. And so we would go there and wait for Alberto to come. We would have a little, you know, shaved fresh Parmesan and some red wine, and he'd come, and booze, chaos, shooting that, glad handing. And then he might stay, he might leave, but he'd just make the rounds, and then he'd go. And then afterwards we got to sit down and eat. And I'm telling you, some of the best meals I've ever had in my life. That was fantastic.
Wow.
Well,
I've always
was that or moose, you know, that or reindeer.
I've always heard stories about the Olympic Village can turn into a pretty good rager at night.
Well, you know, I wasn't in Lillehammer. We were up in Hoffield and Kvitfield, which is where I did all the Alpine, men and women's Alpine events. And it was a sleepy little village that they built for us. And, you know, they carved out the course, you know, out of the trees. It was still really just raggedy on the edges, where they just had come and pulled the trees out. And geez, I don't know. I think even on the opposite side of it's a little valley, and on the opposite side, they had carved out their Olympic symbol with the torch, which actually I have this statue of. And I saw something not long ago, some event that they had, and by golly, that is still on the side of that mountain. It's so great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then there's this picture.
Oh, geez. Some random press conference, I think. Way back in the day. There's that little mixer. Still have it.
You go find the press bridge and then a place to sit, and
yeah,
have your boom ready in case the room goes crazy.
Yeah, all of those things. Yeah. And you know, and I think we must have had, maybe it was, you know, a couple of different, maybe it wasn't even a bridge, maybe because I'm trying to see who's talking, I think. Anyway.
Yeah. Or their position on the mic, making sure it makes sense with what you're hearing.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's always funny when I have people ask me, well, why do you need to see a screen? I'm like, well, we mix to picture. We are, you know, it's like.
It's good to make sure that little twisty turning knob is turned up when the pie hole is working.
Absolutely. And one last picture. Where was this? These are all the ENG days.
Oh my goodness. Yes, that's. I think we were doing a story. It's either in northern Oklahoma or southern Kansas, with a tall prairie grass preserve.
Mm-hmm.
Still actually exists, and this is going to be part of Scorsese's new film, something about Osage County. But I think they were scouting up in this area. But there I am with my little transcript cassette tape.
Ah, okay.
I have to do a transcript, making sure that there was something going on that. You know, you'd have these cassettes you'd have to turn in. That was new. And the beta, and obviously I'm carrying an extra beta tape there for the
yeah.
And there are my electrosonics.
Doing your part for the team. Oh yeah, and your electros.
Yeah, my old electros.
Very cool. So you came, you kind of, you know, you felt like you had done almost all there is you could do in ENG. And so you set your sights on coming to Los Angeles and learning the narrative side of things. How was that transition for you?
Well, it was interesting, to say the least. While I was working, I worked with a couple of people that, you know, I was out here working anyway. And there was a DP from New York, that Alicia Weber, that I would work with. I worked with quite a bit, and she was dating Tommy Causey at the time.
Yeah.
And so I know that there was a time I came out, and she hooked that up where I could go to set with and visit with Tommy and just kind of observe. But I also knew Bob Wald, who some of you may know. Bob Wald from Dallas. I'd known him forever, and I'd gone to sets when I lived in Dallas. I'd gone to sets and visited him, and sort of just to see what goes on in that world and how you do it and all of that. And so I met my partner, who's still my partner, Simone.
Simone.
And she lived out here. And because of Simone, I know, people like Jeff and Lee, and I've been to sets that they've been on too, those kinds of things. But anyway, that's why I moved out here in 95 and just made that transition. And it was, of course, a little slow. I did, the TV movies and late night Showtime series and those kinds of things. But I went to people's sets. I hung out with Bob a lot. He was a great help. He was really great. I could ask him the dumb questions, that everybody should know, but
That's
I
cool.
hadn't worked in this business, this style of work. I might know how, what's on mic, what's off mic, how to work the equipment, blah, 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 blah. But there's a whole different procedure to this kind of work. And so that was great. I could ask all those questions, and he was a huge help, Bob.
That's
Bob,
so
Bob has been very helpful for a lot of people, I think. And you say, ask him stupid questions. I remember asking Bob stupid questions.
Right. But, and then there were people here, like I say, and Simone is in the lighting department, works in this business. And many of you know her.
Was she in lighting when you first met her?
Yeah. Yeah. She was working at Channel 9, KCAL, and places like that, being a board operator and doing small productions. She'd done a few movies by then, but then she was doing big movies. And I think one of the very first movies that she was doing was The Flood, Lee, Hard Rain.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was a nightmare. I couldn't imagine being you on that. But anyway, so I would come up and I met Lee Orloff. Oh my gosh, and other movies that she worked on. She worked on a lot of great big movies, and I was able to meet people like Paul Ledford and Willie Burton and Bill Kaplan, Peter Liedall. Peter was a huge, and Jeff, I think. Maybe, did I? Anyway, Peter was a huge help as well. Peter would have me come in. I also was an early Kantar user. So I would come in and do second unit for Peter, or I would sit in for him. He would be on movies, a Nancy Meyer movie that would go, 2 months over schedule. And he had to go to his stepdaughter's wedding and things like that. So I'd come in and I'd sit in for him because it was a 208, a Kantar. It was, so he had me come in quite a bit. I finished a movie for him once, and he sat in for me on a movie, and I had to leave. A bunch of people, and Bill Kaplan too. Bill Kaplan was a great champion of mine, and helped a lot, and had me come in again, do a lot of second unit for him. He passed my name on to things. Back to the woman thing, he called me one time. He asked if I'd be interested. There was some call he'd gotten for a TV show in New Mexico. And he called me, said, "Hey, I got this call. I don't know if you'd be interested in doing that. I can't do it, but I'd love to pass your name on." I was like, yeah, sure. 15. I had no idea you being a woman was such a big deal. Needless to say, I never got a call from that production. And that's the reality. That's the world that I hate to say I don't think we still live in it now. That was several years back, but still, it's just something that we've had to deal with.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
In the beginning, Shawn, did you feel like you had to be an overachiever because you're a woman and that whole thing?
Oh yeah, again, you couldn't,
make a mistake, right?
You couldn't make a mistake. You couldn't make a mistake, not of any substance. There may be a guy who, whatever has bad RF issues or forgets to push record, or I don't know, whatever, things that have happened to all of us,
Right away, right? I mean,
yeah, no, it's because you're a woman that happened.
Yeah.
Not because you're human. not because you're a human and nobody's perfect and all that. It's because you're a woman. So that, that was not bueno.
Still, yeah, it would to have to engage that and have to keep an eye out for it on a day-to-day basis would just really get old for sure. And I'm really glad the world hopefully is changing in that respect.
I think so. As more women are involved now and are doing great work, there's really there's really nothing they can do about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing. My wife's an attorney, works for Universal Television, and a majority of her coworkers are now women, and it's really, I mean, the head of the studio is a female, woman of color, and it's really cool to see what they're doing. It's amazing. But yeah, it's crazy. It's funny when you mentioned that story about your name being Shawn and meeting the producer in the lobby. It's like my grandmother was named Patsy, and she had a very gruff voice. She's a Irish, redhead Irish, but had a very deep voice, and everybody called her Pat. And so it's the same thing. People would meet her and go, "Oh, you're Pat." Like they would see this tiny, 5'2" redhead woman and go, "Oh, that's Pat." So.
The biases stretch far and wide. With a last name like Mose, I get mistaken for a white Jewish guy a lot. Shawn, Carolyn Barranco says that still happens. I have 2 daughters, and producers ask me who will take care of my daughters while I work.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Let's call Peggy names and ask her about how that worked. I don't know if you guys know Peggy, but she was famous in this world and had 2 kids. Didn't seem to stop her.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember when I joined the local 695. I got sworn in. My boom operator and I, her name was Megan Silverstein, and she and I were both so excited. We both done a lot of indie stuff together. We got our days together, and we wanted to make it a point to go and say our the oath, the oath you take when you join. We wanted to do that together because it was like, it's completing a journey. It was very cool. And but I remember it was like someone in the office there was like, they asked me, gave me some career advice on not not booming from a ladder, and for making the transition from being mixing to boom and back to mixing later and all that stuff. And then they turned to her and said, "So what are you going to do when you want to have kids?" And I was like, what just flat out, right out of the blue. And she was like, "I don't know, I'm early 20s, not really thinking about that right now." And then the person, I won't say the name, but the person was like, "Well, you're gonna have to think about it at some point." What?
My father was very, very supportive of women in camera because it was very much the same situation, totally male dominated. And when women would show up, they wanted to know whether they were in makeup or script or whatever. And I'm a camera operator, or I'm assistant camera, and he had to really fight a lot of those battles for people. Fortunately, things have changed quite a lot, I think. Hopefully.
Yeah. I hope so. It seems so with people, in this business, like Lisa Pinheiro and Put Kuzak and, other up and coming, Amanda Baggs and Michelle Guasto, people like that are coming. They're just more women in it now, and they're not, and they're strong women. They're good at what they do, and they're just moving it forward, which I'd love to see. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's all, they're traveling down the road that you helped pave for them, and that's huge. So I hope we never forget that either.
Well, there were women like Mary Jo Devaney and other women that paved it for me. So I'm always grateful to them as well.
For sure. Yeah. Petrushka Mirzwa, there's quite a few. Yep. That's very cool. Very cool. And I'd like to say to anybody listening that's here with us in the Zoom chat, if you have questions for Shawn, please put them in the chat, or you can even click the raise your hand icon, and Caleb will call on you, and we'll love to incorporate your observations into the conversation.
We've got one comment from Kristen Kebzeno.
Yep.
She
Hey,
says,
Kristen.
Shawn was my first narrative TV mixer. I'm a utility. I appreciate all the errors she allowed me to make.
Now, let me tell you, Kristen, now for anybody who's an A2 or a utility who really wants to get into narrative, Kristen, you were doing reality stuff. I know RuPaul's show, Drag Race, was one of your big shows that you do. And Kristen really wanted to get into narrative. And let me tell you, she was like a sponge. She just absorbed it all. She got it. She was great. She was so good that when I had to leave that show early, we were doing Better Things. And I left that show early to go do the first season of Mandalorian. And Kristen, Amanda Beggs came in to replace me, and Kristen stayed with her. And she was good enough that Amanda took her with her when she left and did the next show. And so, I mean, yeah, hey girl.
Yeah. No, I have
She caught on so fast, but she wanted it. She was smart. She wasn't defensive. She took the information and she ran with it. And that was just brilliant. It was lovely. And I'd work with you again anytime.
For sure. Yeah. I have a Kristen story as well. She
Chris, she gave me, you're the one who gave me her name. You are, Chris.
Yeah.
You gave me her name.
Yeah, because she one of my, I don't do that much commercial work, but when I do get the calls, you know, if I can make them work, I do them. But I got this DP friend of mine recommended me for a series of commercials he was doing for a French eyewear company called Affalou, and they fly their whole contingent from France to LA so they can shoot with Sharon Stone. And the producer I was talking to was very concerned about, we need to make sure Sharon's taken care of. We need to make sure her stuff is ready, and there's like, they just don't waste time around her. And I was like, look, fine. I know we don't usually have utilities in commercials, but we should have a utility, especially on hand to take care of her and get her labbed and mic and all that stuff. And Kristen was that person. And Kristen came in and we did, she did a phenomenal job. And I think at the end of the day, she told me, she's like, yeah, I wanted to get in to do more of this stuff. I haven't done much of this stuff at all. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, she totally fooled me, because she was totally engaged and on point. And I was fortunate enough to have her for a few days doing as a utility on the SWAT B units as well. It's phenomenal. Yeah. So there you go, Kristen.
Yeah.
Talent where it counts, that's for sure. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, comments, please put them in the chat. Caleb will keep an eye out for them. So Shawn, would you say in the beginning when you came to LA, did you, there's a lot of people that are entertaining making that transition, coming to Los Angeles. And, you know, for as many years as it's been, the game is still kind of the same when it comes to making contacts and building your personal network. Did a lot of your early work come from other mixers, or were you making your own contacts with producers yourself and floating your resume out there and finding those jobs on your own? Or what was the combination, or what was the percentages there, I guess, from work you found via your own to networking with colleagues, learning and getting referred from colleagues? Did you get more referrals? Or
well, for me, some of the work came from people that Simone knew. I mean, just friends, you know, and then they were going to do this little low budget, whatever. And they'd say, oh, well, hey, you want to do it? And I'd be like, okay, yeah. But then, like I say, people like Bob Wald would have me come and do second units for him. He was doing a TV show, The Pretender. Is that right? The Pretender, something like that. Anyway, he would, and so then I just got more experience, and people knew my name more. And then I think I did a couple of times for Phil Palmer, even after that, second units. But you know, it was just more of that, just doing second unit stuff, and I'd meet more people, and you know, they'd know my name, and it, you know, I was available. So, you know, so that helped.
So it sounded like integrating with the existing community in town was a really huge part of it.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's very important, because I mean, you know, producers, if you're lucky enough to meet a producer or have a friend of yours that knows a producer, and you guys can just on a personal level kind of get to know each other, then they might feel comfortable enough to give you a chance. But and I found that in my career, especially in those days, it was the men that gave me a break, not the women producers ever. I mean, they were much more reluctant. And I think it was just back in those days too, that they were afraid. They were, again, they would be blamed if something went on, if something bad happened, if something didn't work out, be it personality, or technical or whatever, they would be blamed because they're the ones that brought the other woman in. I don't know. I don't know.
So you think it was more kind of a self-preservation thing?
I think so. I mean, that's how it always seemed. Now, with inclusion writers and all these other things are a little more, there's a little more activity, towards bringing women along, but not if they're not capable. But
I think it's still a meritocracy. I mean, I think once you get your foot in the door, which that's been hard enough for a lot of people, but once you get your foot in the door, I think it's definitely a meritocracy where you have a reputation, and if you're known for getting the job done and minimal drama, and you're good at being diplomatic and a good communicator, that sticks with you.
I think so. And man, that what you just said, the minimal drama, good gosh, that in today's world, that means so much. I know it always has, but there are people that are going to be full of drama, and it's all about you, and it's not, and I'm just, like I say, back from the early days, I learned collaboration. And if you can get that from the other people on set, collaboration, you give, you take, so, and with the least amount of drama involved, there's a time and place, and mostly drama is not part of any of the time and place.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I guess it comes to the question of like the pivotal guidance when you landed here in LA and you really started circulating with all these mixers. I mean, what were the first questions on your mind when you were trying to acclimate yourself into the narrative set? What were the first things that you had to figure out? What were those big glaring differences that were like, okay, this is what I need to figure out? Like,
well, it was the nuance of narrative sound recording, the nuances about that. I just had to get it where you could understand what they were saying in all those years of news work. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to know what they were saying, that there was a plane or a car or crickets or whatever the hell, squeaky floor, it didn't matter, just so you knew what they were saying. That's what you had to do. You had to capture it right now, here, and all that. It was really started to hone your ear to be more aware of all that other stuff on top of, are they on mic, and are they, do I hear clothes noise, and do I hear this, that? I mean, they're just really listening more about the nuances. It was that. And it was as simple as filling out a sound report. I mean, I didn't have to do that. I mean, everything I had gotten in just after most shows had gone to tape-based, either, recording at a deck that I was carrying or recording straight to the camera. I think 60 Minutes was still using film and Nagra, but I'd kind of gotten involved with that show after all of that as well. So I never really had to fill out a sound report or do any of that. I had to label a tape, like, the top of a beta tape, that this is the date and this is where we were, So it, I mean, just that simple, stupid thing that you think that everybody would know, but to make sure that all of that was in line with what it was supposed to be, and just simple things like that, and different equipment. It was a big, you had to shift to different kind of equipment, like a mixing panel, and
well, it was the big shift to going to double system when you had done so much single system work.
What was the question? Was it?
No, I was just saying that the shift was to doing double system work, and all the things that you have to do to expedite that when you had had so much experience, doing single system work.
Yes, exactly. And understanding that tape has to go in every night, that Nagra tape, I did that one time. Somebody told me, oh no, they'll get it tomorrow. They get it tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay. Like one of the very first things. Oh man, did I get chewed? Oh my gosh, I'm surprised they get fired. And it's funny because that producer, I just worked with her on the second season of Mandalorian.
Small world.
She didn't make it through the entire season, but yeah, it was a very small world. Been over,
Jeez.
Whatever, how many years. It's like, oh, well.
Yeah.
Chris, we've got some questions piling up and a comment from Don Hale, who says, I remember Shawn out in the field in the early days when I worked on 48 Hours. Shawn was a groundbreaker then.
Nice.
Oh, Dawn. Love you, Dawn. Love you.
Daniel Martinez has a question. He says, he asks, do you see having been an ENG mixer work into your favor in regards to flexibility and troubleshooting?
I think so. Yes, I do. I do. I remember troubleshooting. We were about to go live on Farm Aid 2 that far ago. Farm Aid,
Yeah.
Farm Aid 2. I don't know what they're up to 27 now or whatever, but and we were interviewing Willie Nelson, and it was about 30 seconds to air, and his IFB went out, and I'm like, oh shit, and I get down to this box, and I see these two wires and I finally just hold the two wires together. He goes, okay, I can hear now. And he starts to squat down with me because I'm squatting down by his knees. I'm squatting just out of the picture, out of the frame, holding these two wires together. And he's about to squat down, and the producer, cameraman are, no, stand up. And so then he goes live, and through the entire interview, I'm standing there holding these two wires together so he can hear the IFB.
Oh, gosh.
But, things like that, when you're doing live stuff, for sure, you sort of learn to troubleshoot in a hurry. And again, I had one chance to get it right back then. I had one chance to get it right. So you just had to be on it. And I think that helped a lot because I was, most of the work I did was for CBS News. And I mean, they had a book of standards this thick. And if something happened, I had the executive producer, who ended up being the head of CBS News at one point in his career, Andrew Hayward, call me at home and ask me about things that happened out in the field on a story, because he'd heard things that the producer had asked this couple to go out and take a walk. We just needed some B-roll. You can't do that. If they're not going to if that's not like their nightly thing, if they go on an afternoon walk or it was their idea, you can't ask somebody to do that. It was that intense. If you were, shooting a cup and just to catch them pick up a coffee cup, if you miss that shot, you can't ask them to do it again. It was some benign things like that, but it was crazy. So it was, yeah.
So not even camera operators could ask for another one, go back, we'll do it one more time.
God, no. That's no. I mean, because when does that stop? Where's that line drawn?
Right.
Where do you draw that line? You just, anyway.
I guess that's the journalistic thing about not affecting the world that you're covering.
That's right. I'm just there to observe. Sometimes I had to turn away because it was so, like, oh, I don't want to be here. Oh, sad or, bad or whatever. Anyway.
For sure. Yeah. Sometimes you can take especially the sad stories, you can take a little bit of that home with you, and it's yeah,
there's some that stick with me to this day, but that's for another conversation.
Yeah.
We've got one more question from Lee Orloff. He says, having come up through the industry on a similar path, dozen years, give or take, in documentaries, he says he found one of the most challenging aspects of the transition to narrative was communicating what I was used to doing with the hand holding the boom to my new boom operator. How was that for you, he asks?
Well, I certainly, it was interesting. When I was first got a boom operator, I didn't tell them anything about other than, you know, I would ask, are you, you know, and I would look and see, are they on mic? It was just being on mic, just really being able to use that microphone the way it should be used. And as we all boom operators here know, you know, there's some voices that just are different with a microphone. Sometimes you have to point at the forehead. Sometimes you point at their chest. You know, you don't know where that sweet spot's going to be, but for a good boom operator, they really need to hear that. And that would be my biggest complaint. I certainly never claimed to be able to boom on a movie set. Never did. And it was funny when I visited Tommy Causey that time, he asked me, he goes, well, so are you going to come out here? You're going to be a mixer? You're going to start as a boom operator or what? And I said, well, I'm sure I boom for myself, but I don't claim to be. He goes, yeah, good. You're a mixer. Be a mixer. Don't waste your time doing that other stuff. And I was like, okay. But yeah, you know, those were the things that with a boom operator, I never tried to tell them how to do their job. I just would ask, are you, you know, or I would look and see and say, do you feel like you're a little in front of them or behind them, or, you know, they're not talking out the top of their head. Sometimes I'd have to say that, but yeah, that was the most of that.
Sometimes just a matter of comparing notes, to what they see to what you hear. And
well, and I've been known, and there are a couple of people here that have worked with me before, Yvette or, you know, and Kristen, but can you hear that? Do you hear that? I say, and I'm like, if you don't hear that, then there's a problem, because that, you know, something's off. It doesn't sound right. And why would you be continuing to boom this that way? Because this isn't right.
Yeah. I wasn't pointing towards difficulty so much as being able to develop that relationship where it becomes unspoken. Once you start to discern the subtleties of pointing the mic between the chin and the chest to knock out the sibilants, you know, moving back a few inches when someone's going to get big, those things that you do automatically because it's your brain and your body reacting to it. When there's the difference of two people collaborating together, it was a most interesting process for me to transition from being a one-man hand on the mixer, you know, spinning the knobs with one and then booming with the other, to the point where we're now a team doing it. And I found that to be fascinating and, you know, just appreciating to what degree we do it now in an unspoken way, that we hear the same thing and that we're in tune to the same thing. Yeah. Thanks.
No, it's very, very true. It's a great point, Lee. It is. It becomes a collaboration, a dance, and as Jeff I know has spoken of Dawn many times in that relationship. It's the same. That's what you want, you know, because you're only as good as what they're doing, and if they aren't doing it, then yeah, it's a disaster. But
was sort of the reverse of yours, in that I started out doing features, you know, albeit very low budget, very non-union. So I always had someone working, someone at least who was called a boom operator, working with me in the beginning. And it wasn't until later that I started doing some documentaries where I had to do it all myself. And I developed an amazing appreciation for what can be done with the microphone when you know what you're doing with the microphone. And also when you were talking before about learning about the nuances in narrative, I actually had a kind of a meltdown on one documentary I was doing where I just felt like I was not doing a good job because things were not sounding the way I think they should sound if I were doing a motion, you know, a film. But in fact, the person I was working with said, "You're doing a fantastic job," because I literally was getting all of that good stuff. And of course, you know, there were airplanes and there were things that, you know, there were people that didn't sound perfect or pristine or anything, but I was getting the stuff. And in a documentary, that's what you need to do. You have to love what you're getting, and not, you know, not be too wrapped up in trying to achieve something which is not achievable. So it was really, I had to bend my head around to be able to do documentaries. So it's sort of the reverse of the things that you had to adapt to.
Well, in films, also, you have the luxury of post-production. of them being able to massage what you give them and make it sound like you're amazing. You know, you want to give them all the best stuff, obviously, but that's one thing I had to really get my head wrapped around is their ability to help move your sound forward, you know.
Right, and you're not making the whole movie on the day. There are lots of other people that, so not only do you have to provide them the right elements, you have to understand what you're doing, what you're providing them, so that they can complete the project.
Right, right. Also, I see Yvette just did something that I was about to say something about Tom as well. Tom Hardig, he is really awesome at where to point the microphone, how to point the microphone to get, and he listens so well. He knows just how to find that sweet spot. He really truly does, and he was a pleasure. And I mean, I got to work through most of 2019 with Randy Johnson, so most of the whole year we all worked together. You know, that's
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think Pamela Shing has a question. Pamela, are you with us?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute. Hey, Shawn.
Hey, no worries.
Hi, how's it going? I just wanted to ask, what are some mistakes that you made during the transition, or as kind of you went through your career, that taught you the biggest lessons?
Oh man, that's a tough one, because I learned something every single show I'm on. There's something that I learn, be it mic placement, but I'm telling you that one time that I didn't turn the tape in at night after, oh man, was that a big lesson? That was stupid. But really, and it's lessons not only technical, but how to not, when to fight for something and when not to fight for something, when it's not important. And I think some of the things that made me much better at that. I don't know where you are, Pamela, if you're in LA or what.
Yeah, I'm in LA. I'm actually, I came from Washington, DC, where most of my work was documentary and, you know, like docudrama reality sort of. So I've been in LA for 8 months, but 2 of those months, obviously, due to Corona, have been sort of useless, but yeah.
Right. Well, here in LA, through Chris, usually they'll do a post-production seminar where you can go and you can see how things like isotope work. Those were eye-opening. I went to 2 of those and they were eye-opening to me, because what it did for me is it really gave me the opportunity to learn what post-production can do for you. And anytime you can have a chance to get into post-production as far as narrative goes, and you can go and sit in either on something you've done, which I've done several times. I've gone to a mixed stage, which is just phenomenal on a movie I've done, and just sit in the back of the room and just sort of see how they do it and what goes on. But really those post-production seminars that Chris is, and I don't know if it's LA Mixers that does it, but whatever they.
Yeah, it's LA Sound Mixers. We have this thing called Bridging the Gap Between Production and Post, a seminar. And now I can do the shameless plug. We're doing it again June 24th, Wednesday, fantastic. And it'll be on Zoom. It'll be our 7th one of those we've done with Thomas Cassetta and Joel Shurat.
You know what? And those guys are great. Joel's posted many things I've done. But I learned so much from that. And what it did is just made me relax more on set. Of course, I'm going to continue to fight the fight as far as getting as clean, any kind of dialogue as cleanly as possible. You know, I'm going to do whatever I can, but, you know, sometimes there's just nothing you can do. And they, you know, a plane's flying by or a big truck goes by in the middle of dialogue, and they look at you, is that okay? And you need to know, is that okay? So that's what these seminars did for me, being able to really sit in on this new technology that's available to post these days and the amazing stuff it can do. So it made you relax and say, yeah, that's fine, let's go, let's move on. And they love it when you say that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a big plus. And that's one of the things that really, really helped me. And you know, what do you mean we can't go again? You're gonna reach terrible. No, you know, just take a breath, everyone chill, and if you can go to that, if you can be part of that Zoom, I highly recommend it. I don't know how it works through Zoom, but I loved being in the room with it because you can really hear. If you Zoom it, make sure you have some good headphones on.
Yeah, in the way that I shared the screen to show the pictures, you can also share the screen to show a Pro Tools session and share the sound, so you'll be able to hear.
Really hear it and really kind of see what the graph and isotope does and all that.
Yeah,
so
yeah. They're Joel and Thomas are prepping all of this material now. For the
and they just
recently
they recently have a couple more plugins for it too that are just phenomenal. But anyway, that I highly recommend because it really does help you understand what you can and can't get away with, and what you can and can't get away with.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Jeff Wexler made a wonderful suggestion during the chat. Since we're talking about new technology, how is working in the volume at Mandalorian been going for you? Are you guys in season 2 yet? No, or season 2 started?
We are wrapped on season 2.
You're wrapped on season 2. Okay, good deal.
Yeah, I loaded my gear out on March the 9th.
Oh,
that
just
Monday.
In time. Wow.
Yeah, it was just amazing. I just reached out, actually, a funny thing, to Post yesterday. So I'm waiting to hear back from them and see how everything's going. I'm assuming that they've been working since you can work remotely with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, there was actually Richard Lightstone's asked me to write an article for 695 about that experience. It is the first season was something we were doing this new technology, and then that's pretty much everyone knows about it now. It's LED walls over the top, 360 degrees. And the first volume, I went down on my own because I was allowed 1 day of prep.
Wow.
Yeah. Season 2, I took 2 days of prep. And season 2, thank God we got a week, but still, that was still just stupid for this kind of thing. But neither here nor there, when I walked out into the middle of the volume during season 1, there was a dot on the floor that was the center space. And I could be having a conversation at almost a whisper level with someone standing right across from me. I would hear my voice amplified coming from behind me. It was unlike anything that I'd ever experienced. Long story short, brought in an acoustical engineer, and he basically said that every 2.5 inches all the way around the wall, your voice is being reflected back at you at 100%, no decay. It didn't make for good times at all. It was quite challenging, but the same acoustical engineer has a product, these ZR screens that a few people now around the country have gotten in. And those helped in some ways, but because the technology of the volume itself, it's lighting the actors. You know, you're in a desert scape and the sun is going down. Well, that sun is what's lighting the actors. Or, you know, or there are clouds rolling by above you, and we have to see that in the Mandalorian's helmet going by. It's all in-camera effects. I mean, 80% of what they do is in-camera effects. It's really quite phenomenal. So because of that, these panels that we had, there were these screens, what does he call them? Instruments. They don't absorb the sound. They don't reflect the sound. They basically stop the air that sound travels on and breaks it apart so it disappears. It really is amazing, but they have to be used properly or they don't work. What's the point? So you have to get them in as close as possible, and you can't block the lighting from the thing. Also on the cameras, there's motion capture tracking balls and infrared cameras all the way around the set, so that when the camera moves, they get the parallax effect. So it moves kind of like your eyeballs do, and so you can't block the infrared cameras either. So it was a real challenge. And again, a collaboration, a real dance with lighting and with the volume technicians, with the tracking and the infrared and all that. But once you could get them in, we could record sweet, nice, clean dialogue.
Hey, Shawn, the thing that most interested me, because I think this sort of technology may end up being used a lot more.
It will be.
Is the whole problem with, I mean, I'm a big fan of what I would call natural sound, where the sound that you're recording, Leah's laughing at me already. You know, you imagine
an old timer.
You've created this, you know, this image of, you know, the desert or someone's bedroom or a factory or whatever.
Or a soundscape that goes beyond all of the dialogue.
There's no way that you can record sound, certainly on the day, that reflects any of what is being seen with the image. So you have to hope for being able to record neutral sound, unencumbered, I guess, by anything, you know.
Massive reflections.
Yeah, the reflections, the noises that the whole process generates, you know, with the LEDs and the camera motor, you know, and the servos and all the rest of the stuff that are going on. And then hope that there will be processes in post that can turn sound, which actually is pretty awful in terms of reflecting what we see on camera, into something that makes sense. And I don't know, you know, Isotope will probably come up with something.
Yeah. I don't know, that the thing that helped us the most in the second season is that they built a new volume. Thank God, they built a new volume, and they consulted with this acoustical engineer for almost a month on the design, but that didn't really change anything. I mean, it did. It's a slightly different shape. It's not quite a perfect circle. Now it's more sort of teardrop-ish in a way, but it still is bad. It's not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. And this will be moving forward. I mean, Stuart Wilson came, he took a look, he's doing Batman this way. His DP was Greg Fraser started with us on The Mandalorian, and Greg has told him to, you know, that I think they're building volume in London. They'll build these volumes all over, and this will be, especially in this time of Corona, because, you know, one morning you can be on an ice planet, and then by tomorrow afternoon, you know, set pieces come into the volume, and that also helps break apart the reflections. You know, you get some of that, and then sometimes you're inside of a set piece inside the volume. So at that point, you're good. But if you're, you know, if a sand crawler is sitting there on the planet and you're walking around having dialogue, well, you hope that it's doing enough, and with the panels you can bring in, and they're going to do some more. But you're right about the soundscape, but we are on planets, so we don't. I just, in the back of my mind, don't expect it to sound like Earth. Yes,
that's. Well, I'm thinking of when you end up, you're not on a planet, but they're actually using this technology to create, you know, a virtual set. That you still are faced with. I mean, in the old days, and I'm sure Lee could chime in on this also, we were faced with this when we were doing exterior scenes. We were doing them on stage. And if it was a noisy stage or a stage that didn't have the proper, in other words, it was not a neutral space, you're doing an exterior scene that sounds like a terrible cavernous interior. And you had to do things to try and minimize any of those reflections or any of the character of the sound so that it would be believable that it's actually an exterior. But
no, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the same with this. You know, it is a lot of the same. I know what you're talking about, to try and have it, you know, when you're walking on this great desert planet and way in the open air, you know, you shouldn't hear reflections of, echoes. And so that was, wasn't easy. It was really tough. And second season was better. And then, you go to, you shoot part of the scene in the volume and then part of the scene in the backlot outside, or, where our backlot location has trains on 3 sides. There's a freight train that would run 3 sides of it. And then up top was the metro. And thank God the metro sounded like a spacecraft, because it would sound like the Razor Crest coming in for a landing. But, and it was, that was part of the thing about not freaking out, because the producers brought this up, the part of the train, the situation, the backlot. They talked about that in my interview for the first season of Mandalorian. And I sat for a second, and I swear this is what got me the gig. The producer and I, almost at the exact same minute, said, "It is what it is." He said it, I said it, almost in concert. It was ridiculous. And so I think at that point he thought, okay, well, she's got the right attitude. Let's get her in.
That's very cool. Very cool. There is a question from the YouTube chat from Aaron Austin. When you are being asked if you're available to mentor or take on a newbie, would you prefer a phone call or an email?
Certainly not a phone call. Yeah, not a phone call.
Don't call.
Don't call. Not a phone call. And the thing is a lot of times when we're able to bring in somebody like on a Y16 kind of framework, or generally they're coming not cold from somebody I've never known in my life, or somebody said, "Hey, I know this person who's trying to get in. I've done a little something. They're great. You should give them a try." And so we'll have somebody come in. Although I've not been on a show where we've been able to get a Y16 in. Although I've worked with Y16s. I went in for Ron Judkins on AI or Minority Report, something like that. And I was doing second unit, and Jesse Names, not Jesse Names, Alex Names, I think was their Y16 at the time. Now he's a mixer, but and he was booming for me on the second unit. It was great. It's really getting involved and meeting more people and having them know your name. And, if there are events to go to, Chris is really great at putting together things, and, it's open for most everybody. And so go and meet these people, have a face with a name. And
yeah, the more people see you and the more they can just get a sense of who you are, how you articulate yourself. Those are all really important. The pillars to building a relationship.
Very important. I'm gonna want to know something like that before I bring you onto a movie set.
Yeah.
Who knows? You might be crazy and want to just stare at an actor all day long or something weird. It's just, so I want to know a little bit about you, or at least have somebody I trust know something about you, maybe.
Yeah, it looks like Ben is asking, what is a Y16? There's actually, it's a Y16A, and do you want to say what that's about, or you want me to give the brief? Yeah, Y16A is a trainee position for IATSE Local 695, and for mixers that can get one on their crew, it's really a good thing. And it allows somebody who's new, who's not on roster, the industry experience roster, which we have in Los Angeles. For people who are not on roster and they're still trying to acquire their days to get on roster to be part of the union, they can get on as a Y16A if the producer will go through the steps and hire them, because it is a paid position. And there's certain limitations to what they can do. But that's a really good way in if you have a mixer that that has a really good relationship with their production, and the production says, fine, it's a fourth person for the crew, essentially.
Thank you.
That is a position of learning.
We just got one very similar situation now for the next film, particularly because of COVID, because we'll need to get a lot of equipment cleaned and, you know, giving out IFBs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the basics of a Y16, and it's a good program, and in my opinion, it doesn't get utilized enough because it does require the producer pay a little more for a fourth person, but it's a really great way to get new people in. So we love it.
Great idea.
Ian Thompson has asked, Shawn, did you find yourself needing to rely on wireless microphones more because of the volume?
It's a good question. Well, of course, the Mandalorian is always on a wire in his helmet. We built a lot of things in. We always go ahead and wire them because of the situation that we're in. Sometimes we can break frame with a boom, but in that situation, it was we were able to boom things. When we finally were in Werner Herzog, there's a scene with Werner Herzog in the first season where we boomed the crap out of that shot. When we were able to get in tight enough for him and his voice, and he was speaking low. If they were speaking at a lower volume, we were able to boom it. And we always had them wired anyway because of the limitations in that, and it did help. It did help. But if they raise their voice, you can hear it. You would hear the sticks, and they go. Anytime they hit the sticks in there, it was insane.
Yeah, it's really. I only spent one day on that set, but it's really creepy to hear your own voice coming from behind you, or somebody else's voice, and there's nobody behind you. It's really weird.
That's messed up. Yeah, that's not bueno. I don't wish it on anyone. So hopefully when they do build these volumes all over the place, which again, I think too with COVID, you can be anywhere, locations, you know, it can be anything you want it to be. I mean, there's a floating little cart in one of the scenes with the forest going by. The moon is going through the trees above you, the lights coming, everyone's, you know, just dappling through, and the forest is going by. You get in there, you can get car sick looking at that. I mean, it really is disorienting. It's so realistic and so all surrounding. It's pretty amazing. It can be a forest one day, and then the next day it's, you know,
yeah,
I don't know, Tatooine or Tatooine or whatever freaking planets are.
No kidding. Oh man. Cool. Caleb, are there any other questions in the chat? Oh, Chris Welker. No, do not call. Chris Welker's like, so you're saying call? No, do not call. Social events, events, handshakes, when they come back, hopefully that'll be the best way.
Right. That's much better, because I don't even answer the phone as it is, especially if I don't get a number.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
And Andrew has said there was a boom leak on The Mandalorian episode 4, I believe.
Yes.
Happens to the best of us.
Well, it was interesting. That shot, we've revisited that shot many times. It was in the volume, and it was on a set inside the volume, inside the set on the volume. And there's a window between these two, I think it's the Mandalorian and this woman. And the boom is right up top above the window. Now the window, there's some visual effects going on through the window. So we went to our VR director and we said, hey, is that cool? Can we break this right here? And he was like, oh yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll fix that. It's not, we'll get rid of that easy. Because it was like just a mask above the window frame, you know, right above them, right between these two. We were getting this great dialogue. Well, they forgot about that shot because it is in the shadow. It's in the dark. You know, you can't, I mean, you can see it, especially after broadcast, whatever they do to it at that point. But you can indeed see it. And we were like, what happened? But I think they went back in and fixed it. I think it's gone now. It was such an uproar. But sure enough, they told us, and we all had notes. Everybody had notes. It was all, yep, okie dokie. Everything was approved and not a problem. We can fix that. Well, they had their hands full. They fix a lot of things.
Shawn, did you guys, did the sound department get blamed for that?
Well, only on the interwebs, only on the chat groups and Facebook and such. That boob is in the shot, and my boom operator, Ben Wiener, was my boom operator for the first season. He was great, and Veronica Kahn was a utility, and she was for second season as well. But Ben got it. He got just rammed with calls and texts, and what's out your boom,
Oh, how annoying.
But production didn't, wasn't our fault. They said they were going to get rid of it, so it wasn't us. And surely by all that time, through all that QR, you would think that our QC, quality control, that you'd see it and you would have fixed it, but nope.
Shawn, I'm just curious as to what was the, how did you document the discussion with the visual effects people so that you covered your behind for that instance?
I make notes right on my Kantar. I just make notes in the sound reports, and caps, and it's not that, because they, obviously visual effects is a huge part of this show. And so they're, I understand they've got their hands full. They do a lot of things. Nobody's like, what happened? There's so much going on we are so way down on the totem pole at that point, as far as, I see you in the shot or in a reflection. Sometimes they had to clean up some reflections of booms in the Mando armor. Mm-hmm. You have to be really cautious and careful about all that. Mm-hmm. But the camera operator and all the people looking at 4K monitors, those people are the ones who need to see that, not us. We're just trying to record the damn sound, and of course we're trying the best we can. And the boom operators, second season was Randy up until the Christmas holiday, and then he thought he was going on straight to do the Coen Brothers movie, Macbeth, and then he was retiring. So Patrick Martins took over at Christmas and finished out the season, and Randy still hasn't finished that movie. Yeah, anyway, those kinds of things. You have great boom operators, and they're looking at all that. They're watching for all that. But sometimes things you get to a spot and you just stay there. It's there, but if you don't move it, you don't see it. People aren't going to notice it. The production they're great about those kinds of things. I mean, it's not like it happens all the time, if ever, and rare. So things slip now and again.
Nice. So you said you were given a day of pre-production on the first season, and on the second season you were given
a week, 5 days.
Week. Yeah. 5 days. Okay, cool. And how much access generally are you given during this time? Not only on this show, but on most shows. Are you invited to tech scouts and production meetings and that kind of stuff? Or do you have to kind of fight your way in there?
Depends on the producers. Depends on our UPMs who have experience and know better. I've never done a production where I haven't gone on a tech scout. I demand it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to show up on a location or all these locations and with my pants around my ankles. I'm just not going to do it, because that's not their job to figure out the problems that the sound department may face when they get there. I don't care what it is. If it's the building itself, if it's, hard floors, hard walls, we need to make sure we have plenty of stuff to take care of that. If it's what day is trash day, what day is, just whatever it is, how the systems, who do we talk to have all this cut off, and, all those things that as mixers we do listen for and try and prepare for, access in and out of all those things. And nobody's going to do that for you. They don't have a clue. And so I've never, even on pilots, even on the first episode of a TV show, I'll go on a tech scout. I will go to a production meeting and we will talk. We'll talk about things, and I'll make sure, especially if I go to a production meeting, that I've broken down the script and I've got questions about something that just kind of, if nothing else, it just makes them realize, oh yeah, well, that's a good question. I guess I'm glad the mixer was here after all, because that's a valid question. And yeah, we need to talk about that, and whatever it is.
Yeah, I think one of my observations has been you'll get included on the people who get included on Tech Scouts are the ones that production needs information from. So it's like, we'll take you, if they need to know something from you, they'll make sure you're there. But but more often than not, they don't understand what we need to know, and they don't understand what we can add to that conversation. And
yeah,
so
and that's how I try to explain it that way. And there's been maybe twice in my career where I've gone, they said they wouldn't pay me to go, I've gone anyway, and then I've made that up on the back end, with a day of rap, or however you have to do it in your magical accounting ways, but you make up for your time spent. And it's always time well spent, always.
Do you think at some point they sometimes see the value of you being there and then decide to pay you?
No, well, after the fact, no. But
No.
But there are those people, those producers, who wouldn't think otherwise. They I've been on many a Scout where I was like, oh, I've never seen a sound mixer on a Scout before, but that's mainly like a television kind of thing. It's never on a feature. And on features especially, that I've never had a problem going on a Scout. I guess television, and then of course as the season goes, you can't, there's no way. But at least that first, and the truth of the matter is if you're on that very first Scout, then you're also meeting people, and you're kind of developing a camaraderie in a way. You have a face with, I know who the best boy electric is. I know how to talk to him about where you're going to put the generator. What are you thinking here? What are you thinking? And is that, or they come to me, is this going to be, can you come look at this space? Because I'm wondering, this is kind of where I'm thinking about the generator. If they're really good at what they do that kind of thing. And you talk about all those things, all those issues. And you already have kind of that, you've already built a little relationship there before you've started shooting. I know a couple of directors who will throw a party before the show starts, just so you can do that. I think Tarantino maybe has done that on a time or two, maybe. Anyway, he throws a party just for the wind blows. Let's have a party.
We did that. One of the first movies I worked on was a Grandma's Boy we shot it in 2005. It was Adam Sandler's company produced it. But yeah, they had a kickoff party. And I think there's only a handful of movies in my career where they've had kickoff parties, but
yeah, well,
that was one
great,
of them.
Because you build that relationship, and it's kind of a nice casual, more of a casual thing, as opposed to just hitting the ground running with the first day of shooting. It helps, makes a difference.
For sure. Yeah, I think we took over El Cid that night and had a great time. Boy, those margaritas were good. But cool. So this is that case where I get so caught up in the answer that I don't look at the next question.
Ben Adams is saying how much production recording was used versus ADR because of, he calls it the void. I assume he means the volume.
So that's an interesting question. When Carl Weathers came back this season to direct and to act, I asked him, I said, so how much ADR did you have to do? And he sat and he thought about it. He goes, none. I didn't do any. So I'm sure that there was plenty that had to be done, especially in the backlot with the trains. And there are times when you just can't avoid the problems with the volume. But I know that we've our asses to try and get clean dialogue of everybody, void of reflections and other obstacles. We worked very hard to do that. We truly did. And I was happy to hear that. I also, when I asked Gina, who plays Cara Dune, she said maybe 2 or 3 lines. It wasn't much. It wasn't much. So I haven't been able to talk to, like I say, last year, I tried very hard to get a hold of post-production. there was no call, there was no crew list. So I had no numbers. There was no way to get a hold of anybody because the Lucasfilm websites that we had been in communication with all went away after a certain amount of time after the production. I tried to contact the post-production supervisor like 4 or 5 times, and she never got back with me. I was going up to the Bay Area. I wanted to go to the ranch. Skywalker is where they posted. And I never was able to get through to anybody. So this year, the supervising sound editor was he was on set, and I had a discussion with him. Well, I take it back, about 3 days before we started shooting, I'd been trying, finally, once we got back into prep, I was able to get a number, and I was going back and forth, and I was going like, okay, well, what was good, what was bad, feedback, what worked, what did not work, how can we make it better, what can we do? And it was more about, because last year, the first season, I gave them a cedar track. I also had cedar on my cart, just as it was a mixed track down the line that was going to earwigs and Comtex, director's feeds. And they said, we don't care about that. Don't do that. We don't want that. So they didn't want the cedar. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. It doesn't really do anything for certainly the volume. And that was the only place I was really using it, was in the volume, trying to help with any of that, but it's not for that. I should have used it more in the back lot, but still they don't want affected tracks. And that's kind of how I've always been. The less you can do to them, just the cleanest tracks. And used to, it was like saturate that tape, but now it's to just to get the cleanest tracks you can possibly get and let them do their magic. Let them do their work in post. That's what they do. They're in a controlled environment, and they get lots more than one chance to get it right. They have all the tools that you will never have. You could try and emulate out on set, but it's never going to be right. I mean, if I was doing live, and Dawn, I don't know if you're using Cedar doing live stuff now in that situation, but if I was still doing that kind of work, now I might consider it, because there are times when you're on a busy street, you're trying to get an interview. And if you had just if you could just click down a little bit of that, it might be better. But as far as movie making goes, I don't.
Hey, Shawn, I can interject some of the things that you're saying about cedar. I have a cedar. I have, and I bought it specifically because I still do a lot of work with CBS, and moreover, I use it in a live situation where I can alleviate that background sound, which in turn will definitely affect the dialogue. But they used it. There were a couple of mixers on 60 Minutes that used it, and they did not know how to use it properly. You really have to know what you're doing with the cedar, as you know, Shawn. And you get to that threshold point where it really does begin to colorize, not only, get sort of the background noise, but it really begins to colorize the dialogue section of that bandwidth. So 60 Minutes came back, the post-production, they said, no more cedar. And that kind of did it for everybody, which is fine. And that goes back to what you said before, is getting the most cleanest possible tracks as you can, so they can do their magic. And I do remember Chris and one of the breaking the gap post-production,
bridging the gap.
Getting that most important thing when you're using your wireless, and you have many wireless out there, having that boom out there just to get the ambience makes all the difference in the world for them to do their magic. And that's one thing that really reinforced in my mind of that. But the cedar's a great tool, but it's a tool, and your basic production sound techniques have always been to, at the very most, at least with me, is just do a low end cut, and that's it, and get those clean tracks. Because if you go ahead and colorize it and you deliver files that are unable to be manipulated, that's the ghost.
Yeah, again, they can do much better that I can, where, you know, doesn't compare to what they can do. So I'm gonna let them do it. We're paying them for something.
For sure, for sure. So what do you, after coming this whole way, you know, what are the things you have on your cart now, gear wise? Are you still a Kantar person?
Oh gosh, yes. I will always be a Kantar person. I have 2 X3s. One's built in a bag with wires. I finally got some SRCs, but I still have a couple of I have 3 SRCs, a couple 411s in there, and that mirrors my first 8 and on my cart. So if I have to go from point A to point B and it's ready to go, I just turn it on and it's all dialed in.
I think I have a couple of pictures of you at the cart, so I'll see what I can share and
I up until now I've been on my 208 still, my Cooper. I've been I love it and I always will. But I also have a Cantoress that I'm through this COVID experience have every intention of getting up and going. Oh geez. Oh, backlot on the Mandalorian. We're trying to hide all the distinguishing characteristics of the of this dirt pit.
I couldn't tell until you said it.
That's a 788T there?
It is. That's what has been my backup, just as a backup recorder. And I don't know. I mean, I know some people are not running backups anymore. Some people still do. This, I had if you can see kind of underneath the keypad on the back of the 208, there's a T that comes out of the D sub 25, and that was just teeing out everything that was coming through the mixer. But on the top of the Kantar, you know, I've got 9 tracks coming from the 208, mix track plus 8 ISOs, and then ISO 10, 11, 12 are up on top of the Kantar. And it would be like playing an organ, you know, a little Hammond organ up there. But I have a Cantoress, and like I said, I'm trying to incorporate that. You figure by now I've had all these months, but always seems like it's very busy. There's just no time. But I have to, if I do get this incorporated into the cart, the Cantoress, it's going to take a lot of kind of rejiggering of things, and I may or may not run a backup. At that point, I would have to figure out how I would do it. Simply because the 788 doesn't have Dante. I don't know how I would get the signal into it from the Cantoress. It would take a lot of kind of weirdness. I don't really want to buy another recorder. Like I said, I have 2 X3s. I don't want to buy something else that's Dante capable. So I think I could also use the 788 as an A to D and get 6 digital tracks out of it. Just take it that way. And as if I did that, then those tracks and a mix track could just be being recorded in the 788. And that's kind of how it's been, because if I have a higher track count, the 788 only gets the first, 7 tracks plus a mix.
I love seeing you with the Cooper.
Yeah, me too. I just love it, man. I got home from the Mandalorian, took that thing apart and just, cleaned all those faders and got them. It's just silky. It's silky now. It's just, that's hell.
Talk about going.
That was hell.
I never made the jump to using a control surface, like the Mix 16 or anything with the Diva. I just stuck with my Cooper till I retired. But the thing is, you're using the Cooper, you're missing out. I mean, you're obviously getting what's wonderful about the Cooper, but you're missing out on all of the power and features and functions of your Kantar. And in my case with the Diva, there was all sorts of things that had I been going directly into the Diva, I would have been able to do much more easily than I was with the Cooper. But I wasn't willing to give up that sound and familiarity.
Right, and I think that's has a lot to do with why I still use it. I mean, and I've been lucky up to now. I've only run out of tracks twice, maybe once or twice on some little TV show thing or something. And I've just managed to, work it out as we do. It's you double boom somebody or play somebody off of somebody else's mic, whatever it takes, you make it happen. And then when you do coverage on that person, you get it, whatever. It's not rocket science. but it's true. It's a higher track count, and it afforded me, I don't know. See, and I like about the, and it's just as quick with the Kantar. It's just as easy to add an aux track, just send a feed out for music or do, whatever. It's just doing it. And with the Cooper, it's, 2 seconds, and I'm
the few times when I wanted to be able to give Don just his microphone, you can do it with the Cooper, but you've got to assign what was the boom output to an aux and then put that pre-fader and do it, whereas with the Diva, or like I'm sure with the Kantar, you could just say, well, you want your mic, bang, here's your mic.
yeah.
And,
and I get that. And that used to be much more prevalent in the days before ISOs, before multi-track recording. You might have maybe like a 4-track or something, whatever, a PD4 or whatever we were using, even the first Kantar. And I think now they still want to just hear their boom. Sometimes, yeah, it's true. Although anyway, yes.
What are those situations? Yeah. What are those situations where you would want to have the boom op listen to just their own mic? I'm used to them hearing the mix and knowing when the labs are coming in and not coming in. So
it's their preference. It's their preference. They just want to hear it because they want to really hear what they're getting, what they're, if they are on mic, if they're getting everything, and they don't want all that other garbage in there with it,
Right. I think I'm the opposite on this, in that I would say the number of times that Don wanted to hear his mic only, I can probably count on one hand over 40 years, because Don was always participating in whatever mix we were doing. It didn't matter whether we were using just his mic or his mic and 2 wires and a plant and all that. He was participating in the mix, and so he always wanted to hear the mix, which of course gave him the opportunity to say, Jeff, the next one, you're a little heavy on the one, that crossfade was not really
yeah,
could be.
He was that way for sure.
Yeah, everyone's a critic.
I would want to give the boom operator their own mic would be when maybe the second boom was doing off-camera stuff, which I wasn't even feeding into the mix necessarily, but recording it. I want to give them their mic only because they're not participating in the mix. But I could do it with the Cooper. It was just much more involved than doing it with the recorder.
Chris,
yes.
Another question. Jonathan Ayala Colon from Mexico City. Sorry, Jonathan, for butchering your name. Shawn, he asks, how do you communicate with your boom ops and utility? And he's also curious as to if you could tell us what specific system you're using for that.
It comes straight through my 208. There's a communications module right there, and I just have a private line. I just push a little button and talk right to them.
And they communicate with you using the boom mics?
They do, yeah. We've just recently, this past year, got the walkie-talkie set up, the combiner, this little box where they can monitor the walkies, and then they can go to a channel. We can go to channel 16 or something, and they can communicate straight with me. But most of the time it's just through the booms. If it begins to be something a little more personal, then I can just kill the contacts, kill the feed out.
Right.
Okay. Very good. There was something I was going to ask, totally just escaped my mind.
That's my world, Chris. That's the world I live in.
There it goes. It's gone. Okay, cool. Well, it looks like Ben also has a question. Are you recording wild tracks on particular lines? If possible, Ben, if you want to expand on that question a bit.
I mean, I can answer that.
Yeah.
If I always ask for one if we need it, and generally it's just for some reason it rarely happened on Mandalorian. But a few times. And it was always, sure, boom, done. 10 seconds later. I always fight for a wild line, because if you haven't gotten it, if it's just whatever's happening, the environment, whatever it is, there's been every time that guy says the line, somebody smashed something on the table, or every time, whatever it is, because the actor is there. He's in the moment, the emotion, the energy level, all of it is happening right now. It never is going to sound right if you wait to ADR to get it. It's just, if we can get it now, the ambience of the room is the same. The energy is the same. He's in the moment, he or she, whatever. So yeah, if I haven't gotten it through the takes that we've had, if there's some reason for each line that the line, if there's a line, specific line, I'm going to get it. I'm going to ask for it.
It's so useful, isn't it?
Oh, so incredible.
And I think it's appreciated.
I know it's appreciated by post-production for sure. Yeah. And I think from the actors as well, they love it, because then they think, oh, geez, good, I don't have to go to ADR. Although some actors love ADR, and they tell you that, and I don't understand it, but they, whatever.
Yeah, I pulled a prank on a post team once. It was a very light prank, but I just called very seriously asking for the ADR report. And they're like, what? Like, the ADR report. I need to know what lines had to be ADR'd and for what reason. So, I mean, come on, we're doing the ADR report. The ADR report. All right. So everybody start calling, asking for your ADR reports, because you're the mixer. You should know. You should know what's being ADR'd. But cool. So how many rigs are you maintaining now? Do you have the cart rig? Do you have also a smaller, like a mini cart or a bag rig? How many rigs?
I do. I have a Euro cart that I've built out with power and all of that for just small rigs. I use it, in those hard to get to places. I put my bag rig, my X3, the second X3, just plop it right on top of that. Or if I just have to have the bag, I can just take the bag. But I can plop that on there. I can plug in power, plug in Comtech feed. I have another base station on the Euro cart. Antennas are already all there, all built, and I'll use it. I've had to shoot on the subway. You just roll that in. You're stuck in a corner. It's easy. I've started doing it on process trailers. Just lift it up, stick it on the very back of a process trailer, and I'm on. It takes 5 minutes, and I'm ready to go on a process trailer. And then at the end, and I think recently, Jeff, you were talking about this in another chat of some sort, talking about how you would get back from doing this elaborate car rig thing, and production, the second camera was already set up in the next place, ready to go. Well, if you're doing it this way, it takes me 5 minutes to get off, and all my stuff is put together still. I haven't had to dismantle or unwire and, unmount antennas and all that. It's just there, and I roll into wherever it is, and I'm ready to go. They're not waiting on me. I get crazy looks from Key Grips, and they're like, wait, what? But it happens more. I think there's other people that are doing it. And it's certainly a small enough footprint. It's not a problem. Although
you have to get their, I imagine you have to get their help in cinching the cart down and everything.
And I've not had a problem there. They'll stick a pole through a thing and a couple of ratchets, and we're good to go. It's not a problem. And I'm all contained. I've got my battery, my power. I've got everything. Everything is there. I'm ready. It's no sweat. I did a movie called Nightcrawler, and it was so much driving, so much car-to-car work, not some process trailer, but 80% of that movie was car-to-car, and just having everything built, rigged. I've put this rig in the back of a van that we're leading the car, and I've got antenna mount, these suction mount antenna rigs that go outside and on top, and then I've had suction mounts for transmitters in cars if you don't see the top of the car, if there's camera mounted just looking through the windshield, that kind of thing, then I'll remote those transmitters up on top of the car, and with extensions from the mic all the way up to the thing, and so to do car-to-car work that way, man. Oh. But yeah, the Euro cards come in very handy. I'm glad I have it. I've used it, and if I had to go, on the beach or up in the hills or whatever, I mean, it's easy to transport, and everything's there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worked out well.
Very cool. Very cool. So 2 basic rigs. That's awesome. All right. We are getting near to the end of this. So is there a way people can reach out to you with questions, maybe via email or something? What's a good way to get in touch with you?
Sure. My email, soundchick1@gmail.com. Mark, I hope
Very cool.
Mark Udo, I see you laughing. I've worked with Mark. I got an opportunity to work with Mark. We did a little movie in Mississippi. That was a ton.
What part of Mississippi? My brother lives there.
We were mainly in Jackson, right? Mainly in Jackson and little bits around.
Jackson, and then the other place was Canton, Mississippi.
Canton. Oh, Garden
Nice.
Spot. Garden Spot. Yes.
Yeah. My brother was in Oxford for a long time, and he just moved to Water Valley, Mississippi, the thriving metropolis of Water Valley, which is like a suburb of Memphis. It's that far north.
Wow. Yeah.
So, well, very cool. I guess couple last questions. Maintaining personal physical fitness on long running jobs, and how do you decompress after an intense day on the set? What do you do when you get home? I mean, it's
physical fitness is a tough one on set. It's back when I was doing, I did a couple of months of second unit on a movie called Lemony Snicket for Kuzak. And there were some effects guys who had made these exercise bands out of like surgical hose, and everybody had them. And I still have mine, hangs on the end of my cart. So I'll sit there a lot of times and just, do some exercises with that on, depending on the lot at Manhattan Beach where we do Mandalorian. There's a long set of stairs that go all the way up to the perms, all the way up to the top of the stage. So we'd go up, sometimes Veronica. Sometimes Veronica would do it with me, but we'd go all the way to the top. You'd do a 30-second plank, and then you'd come down. And you might do that 2 or 3 times a day. And then I was working with a vet on a little Disney Plus show, and that whole camera department in the camera truck at lunch would do planks. You'd start a plank, and they got up to like 3-minute planks. You'd go and just, So that was just trying to do. I did on a movie called Hotel Artemis. The whole camera department, well, not the whole camera department, the women in the camera department and we would do at lunchtime, we'd all go eat lunch. And when we came back, we'd do this whole sit-up routine where you do just 50 sit-ups. So, and I have a friend, Kevin Campari, who gets people on set. Everyone's doing a push-up routine or some kind of routine. And, you mark down. First you start with 10, and then you do 15, and you get up to 60, push-ups. Do that a couple times a day. You'll get your attention. So just to kind of do something, because there's so much time but in between setups sometimes. And you do have it takes 10, 15 seconds to just drop and do 10 push-ups. It's not a big deal.
Mm.
And then you can do 15, and then you just kind of, so just something. And winding down at the end of the night, cocktail.
Yes. Well, what is the drink of choice there in the house?
Oh, it just depends. Might be a little nice little glass of wine, or it might be a vodka soda. I don't know. Just winding down. Just come home, sit for a minute, just let your mind decompress. And then of course you've got to go through all your emails and deal with the things you couldn't deal with at work.
True. Yeah. It's a lot of just intersect communication and then personal life and then that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Put in another load of panties, you know? So.
Yeah. Sometimes after a long running show, I'll refer to my family as those other people who live in my house.
Right.
Like, I get to spend some time with those people who live in my house. Yeah. The bar here in the Howland household is kind of like the, Benetton. I mean, there's a little Russia, there's a little Mexico, and there's a little Kentucky in there. So,
yeah. Like to have all the world represented.
Very cool. So soundcheck1@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being here. If there's any final questions, now is the time for you, everyone, to chime in if you'd like. But I'd love to let you all know that next week, Thursday, we will have another mentorship chat about a really cool, awesome young man who moved here from Peru at the age of 17 and is now a Emmy-winning sound mixer. That is Juan Cisneros. So we're going to have a chat with him and hear his story next Thursday. And so we hope you can make it back and join us then. But Shawn, thank you so much for doing this chat with us.
Thank you guys. I hope it wasn't, I hope I wasn't too just random.
Not at all. Not at all. But thank you. If there's no other questions, we will sign off.
Thanks, guys.
Again, thank you. Thank you, Caleb. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff and Ben. Thank you for staying up so late.
Good to see you, Jeff.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. See you later.
See you later. Good morning.
Good morning.